and God's forgiveness. Born in Highland Park, Michigan, and raised in Ironwood, Bob devoted his life to learning and to helping others succeed. After earning his bachelor's degree from Northland College and a master's in education from Northern Michigan University, he moved to Houghton, Michigan in 1967. For the next 35 years, he taught U.S. history and government at Houghton High School, shaping the minds and the character of generations of young people. To many of his students, he was simply Mr. B, but to the community, he was much more than a teacher. Bob was a mentor, a coach, and someone who believed deeply in investing in young people. He coached basketball and golf, and even after his coaching days ended, he stayed involved in athletics as a referee, bringing fairness, enthusiasm, and integrity to every game he worked. He was that kind of referee on the basketball court who celebrated the players of both teams on a shot well played, and sometimes would chastise them a little bit for them being on the outside the edges of the rules. In fact, he told me a story one time. He said to his class, it was the beginning of November, and he said, you know, November 15th here in Northern Michigan is not a holiday. Just because it's the opening of deer season doesn't mean you get a day off of school. However, if a few days after the 15th, if there's some fresh venison on my desk, your grades won't suffer. That was the kind of guy Bob was when it came to engaging his students and celebrating life as it was meant to be for these young high schoolers. Bob believed that service to community didn't stop at the classroom door. In 1990, he stepped into public service, first on the Houghton Planning Commission and later on the City Council. In 2008, he was elected mayor of Houghton, a position he held with pride and dedication for more than a decade. Those who worked with him often described Bob as the kind of leader who brought people together. He led with kindness, wisdom, and an optimism that made others believe in the future of their town. He was the kind of person who knew everyone, encouraged everyone, and celebrated every success, big or small. But to our family, Bob was something even more important. He was a steady presence, someone who cared deeply about the people around him. He faced life's hardships with strength and grace, carrying forward with the same generosity of spirit that defined him. Bob loved his family, and one of his greatest joys was being a grandfather. He took pride in watching that next generation grow, just as he had taken pride in helping the generations of students find their way. And as his granddaughter, Charlie, heads off to Miami of Ohio this fall, I know she's going to take the memories of her grandpa with her and celebrate that every day. Mr. Speaker, communities across this country are built by people like Bob Beckan, people who quietly dedicate their lives to others, teachers who inspire, coaches who mentor, local leaders who step forward not for recognition, but because they care deeply about the place that they call home. Bob embodied the very best of Michigan's Upper Peninsula: hard work, humility, kindness, and an unwavering commitment to community. His impact will live on in the countless students he taught, again, the athletes he coached, the city he helped lead, and the many people whose lives were better simply because they knew him. And whenever you hear the song Sweet Caroline, you think about Bob humming that somewhere and leading the chorus. That was his song, and I'm sure he's still singing it up in heaven now. I will always be proud to call him my cousin and friend. May his memory be a blessing and an inspiration to all who knew him. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Frost, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise to talk about the investigation and horrific crimes of Jeffrey Epstein. About a week ago, I attended President Clinton's deposition in New York last Friday. This deposition raised even more questions about President Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Let me explain why. First off, of course, President Clinton said that President Trump flew on the plane. But not just that, President Clinton also recounted a conversation he had with President Trump about Jeffrey Epstein on a golf course in New York in the early 2000s. He said that President Trump had told him that the reason him and Jeffrey Epstein had fallen out had to do with a real estate land dispute. This directly contradicts information that President Trump has stated in the past. He has claimed that their falling out was over spa workers at Mar-a-Lago. We also know that his own Commerce Secretary, Secretary Howard Lutnick, is in the files as well. Despite this, the president contends that he doesn't know anything about Jeffrey Epstein's crime, and the questions are, if you don't know anything about the crimes, how do you know that Howard Lutnick is innocent, as the president has stated multiple times? I also have unanswered questions about President Trump's Mar-a-Lago club. President Trump himself said that Jeffrey Epstein stole many of the women who worked at the spa in Mar-a-Lago. I made a motion in the Oversight Committee to subpoena documents related to Jeffrey Epstein and Mar-a-Lago. No Republican on the Oversight Committee supported my motion. Republicans on the Oversight Committee wanted to spend our time talking to Secretary Hillary Clinton, and if we're calling spouses before the Oversight Committee, why haven't we talked to Melania Trump yet about what she knows? There are still many questions that need to be answered, and I'm proud that yesterday the Oversight Committee issued a subpoena to Pam Bondi. We will hold her accountable for what is obviously a cover-up and her withholding many of the Epstein files. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to chat about what I've been doing at the Department of Justice. Many members have been going to the Department of Justice to view the Epstein files unredacted. Many of the files I've looked at were still redacted, even ones without victims' names in it. And some of the files I went to look for are no longer accessible and actually have been removed from the website. We know these files existed, but they've been scrubbed by the DOJ. Americans are tired of the corruption. They're tired of a tiered justice system where, depending on how big your bank account is and how connected you are, will have a direct outcome or will directly impact the outcome of your case. They want transparency. And so I took online to Reddit and different websites to ask folks what I should look at and what they wanted transparency on as far as the Epstein files were concerned. Here, I wanted today to come to the floor to share some of the files that people online have asked me to look into. The first one was this file that talked about a torture video. This right here is an email. The email belongs to Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem, and that is who this was sent to. The next one has to do with an email that says, "Did you know somewhere in the hills outside Zorro, 2 foreign girls were buried on orders of Jeffrey and Madam G. Both died by strangulation during rough fetish sex." This is from a fake email right here, dfd42299@protonmail.com. And then at the bottom down here, they're arranging for a Bitcoin to be sent to a wallet address. I'm actually going to read that address out loud. 3CR9T PVEREGEG 4ZG HPEDZMC 94 HZUUSCBHN. One of the other files people asked for some transparency on had to do with the Federal Bureau of Investigation CHS reporting document. This is still redacted. Even when I went into the DOJ and clicked the button to unredact it, it was still redacted. I was told they received it this way. The next one has to do with a diary of drawings and collages. Something that could definitely give us some more information that could be useful. This is also still redacted. There are many pages from the diary all redacted. Of course, we need to keep the victims' names from being made public, but Congress has a right to investigate this important information. One of the files that folks asked me to look into is about Donald Trump. Jeffrey Epstein forwarded an email to Ghislaine Maxwell. This email was from Jack Goldberger. Okay.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Yocum, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday we lost a giant. Growing up in South Bend, Coach Holtz was more than a football coach. He was a living legend. When I was young, my family took me to a Notre Dame hockey game, and we were walking up late, so there was nobody else around. And appearing out from the shadows, you could see the silhouette of Coach Holtz. My father asked if he had a moment to say hello and sign autographs for us. Coach could have just blown us off, but he didn't do that. He walked straight up to me, got down on one knee, stuck out his hand and said, "Hi, I'm Coach Holtz. What's your name?" That moment for me became a lifelong lesson. It taught me that no matter who you are or where you go in life, you're never too important to say hello to someone that wants your time. That's exactly who Coach Holtz was. A national champion, a Hall of Fame coach, sure. But even more importantly, he was an extraordinary person. He's someone who brought out the best of people. He got more out of people than they ever believed possible. He inspired them to be the best that they could be, and he set a high standard of excellence that the people around him could only hope to achieve. Sally Ann and I lift up the Holtz family in our prayers. Thank you, Coach, for the memories. Thank you for your positive influence on the South Bend community and Notre Dame at large. Go Irish. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Ohio, Ms. Sykes, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we come off the observance of Black History Month, we are reminded of a story of courage, scholarship, and action that helped reshape how America understands its past. Black History Month began with the work of Carter G. Woodson, who believed that contributions of African Americans must be visible, taught, and celebrated. In 1926, he created Negro History Week to highlight Black achievement and make space in our nation's story for those who are often ignored. But it was Kent State University, my alma mater, in 1969 and 1970 that students decided that 1 week was not enough. Black students and educators argued that history this rich and important deserved at least a full month. Students from the Black United Students Organization proposed expanding the observance into what we now know as Black History Month. In February 1970, Kent State became the first campus to celebrate a month-long event, 6 years before it became a national observance. As someone who attended Kent State and studied in Oscar Ritchie Hall, I know firsthand the power of students demanding more truth, more justice, more inclusion. Their voices shaped one of many national movements, showing how change can start with those who are willing to speak up. Although February has ended, the lessons of Black History Month do not end with it. History shapes our identity as a nation, good, bad, and everything in between. When we know the struggles and triumphs of those who came before us, we understand our collective journey towards justice. Black history is American history, and leaving any part out makes our story incomplete. The close of Black History Month is not a conclusion, it is a continuation. It is a reminder to confront inequities in education, economic opportunity, healthcare, voting rights, and justice. True justice requires more than just recognition. It requires change. It requires action. Even as the calendar turns, the call remains the same. Lift every voice, celebrate achievements, confront injustice, and teach future generations a history in the need for diversity, equity, inclusion, and unity. As we reflect on Black History Month here on the House floor, I ask all of my colleagues to recommit to these principles, because when we expand the story of our history, we expand the promise of our future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Davis, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, the Greenville, North Carolina United States Army recruiters and those across the country, they're working hard to get the job done every single day. My son Justin has arrived now at Fort Benning, Georgia, to become an infantryman. He went from carrying our nation's flag to now answering the call to protect it. Inspired as a child and from his 4 years in JRTC with the Ram Battalion at Green Central High School in Snow Hill. I recall a few months back, he called me and he said he wanted to talk to me about something. And I said, "Son, what is it?" He said, "Dad, I want to join the Army." I said, "Well, son, you know I was in the Air Force, right?" And he said, "Yes, I do, Dad." He said, "But I want to join the Army, and you're not changing my mind." I said, "Well, son, what is it that you want to do?" He said, "I want to be an infantryman." I said, "Son, you do understand the risk?" And he said, "Yes, Dad, I understand the risk." And he went on to say something very moving and profound. He said, "Dad, I listed my brothers as my beneficiaries." Later, he shared that after praying, he went in and took the oath of office with his Bible in his pocket. And by the way, I saw that Bible later. It was a camouflage Bible, but the words were the same. As his father, I said to him, "Son, I love you. Serve us well." And I found in me to say, "Hoo!" Mr. Speaker, I pause to give a special shout out in recognition to Major Morales, Sergeant Penhallow, his JRTC instructors, to Sergeant Head, who was really instrumental in sharing with Justin about the Army, Sergeant Young, who reminded all of us that you don't just recruit soldiers, but you recruit families. As a member of the House Armed Services Committee, I must admit that I'm a proud father. I'm a proud father. Decisions that I make serving on the House Armed Services Committee have become just so personal. But I want everyone to also understand, I can't be willing to ask any parent across this country to send their son or daughter without giving mine. The last words that Justin shared with me before he was leaving, he said, "Dad, I'm going to make you proud." To my colleagues, oh God, he has more than made me proud. To all the recruits who are shipping out to serve our country, and especially right now during these challenging times. I was taking them to MAPS in Raleigh. This was over the weekend. But during these challenging times, I want to thank every single recruit with all of my heart. Thank you for your bravery. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your willingness to serve our country. Thank you for your love for America. And to every recruit, I share the same words that I shared with my son. Be strong and be of good courage and be all that you can be. I yield back.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Fallon, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, a legend was called home. Lou Holtz passed away surrounded by his loving family, and I know Coach, if he had to choose, wouldn't have it any other way. Coach Lou Holtz will forever be a national treasure. He's a Hall of Fame coach, and he earned it. And he was born in modest means on January 6, 1937. His parents, Andrew and Anne Marie, raised him near a small mill town in West Virginia, right on the border in Liverpool, Ohio. Coach went on to play linebacker. I think he probably was 135 pounds soaking wet, but he was a linebacker at Kent State. And he used to joke about, when he would give some of his great speeches, that he graduated third in his class, third from the bottom, not the top. And he went on, and when he's 34 years old, he was having a tough time in life, so he wrote down 107, and then it became 108 life goals. Some very lofty ones. One, I believe, was to appear on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. He wanted to be a head coach, he wanted to win a national championship, and many other goals. He achieved, if he didn't achieve all of them, he achieved nearly all of them. He became a head coach at William & Mary, then at North Carolina State, and then 1 year with the New York Jets when Joe Namath was there. That didn't go too well, so his calling was back in college, and he went to the University of Arkansas. He had wild success there, and then the University of Minnesota. And in his contract, he could leave for one school, and that school was the University of Notre Dame. And we won a national championship there in 1988, a very special time. Coach Holtz coached many great Americans. Byron Spruell, Pat Eilers, Rod West, Tony Rice, Derek Brown, Reggie Brooks, Ricky Waters, Jerome Bettis, Steve Berline, Andy Heck, Ron Meyer, James Dillard, Antoine Lark, and one of 1,500. I got the privilege I used to joke, I didn't necessarily play for Coach Holtz, I practiced for him. But Coach used to say you should have 4 things in life: something to do, someone to love, someone to believe in, and something to hope for. And I want to share with you all, he was in hospice, he passed away yesterday. But you know, when you're in hospice, you know the end's coming. And this is what I shared with Coach Holtz. I sent him a text last month. I'm going to read it to you. Coach, I'm sitting in my office in the U.S. Capitol, and I know one thing for certain. I wouldn't be here right now had I not crossed your path. In short, you're a legend, and I love you. I had the honor of introducing you about a half dozen times over the last decade or so. And if you read Coach Holtz's bio, it's going to tell you that he has 2 sons. But that is wildly inaccurate. He has 1,502 sons. That's how Coach's players see him, as a coach, a mentor, a friend, and very much a second father. Coach, you demanded the best from all of us and taught us to dig deep and reach our full potential. You taught us not to exist, but to live, not to wallow, but to thrive, not to just dream, but to act. You taught us to take hold of our own futures and fates. So many of us did just that. I oftentimes share with people that you came out and did a fundraiser for me in 2018 when I was running for the Texas Senate. And I share that not to name drop or to impress people, but to share the person that you are. You refused payment. You flew from Florida to Texas to help a reserve player that you had coached 30 years prior. That's who you are. Generous beyond measure and a great American patriot of our republic. You are to be admired and emulated. Coach, you inspired us to be the men the good Lord made us to be. I was reading the other day that at some point, for most of us, there will come a day when our name will be spoken for the last time. For most of us. not for you. Because you're a legend. And you know what, Coach? Damn it, you earned it. Coach Lou Holtz, God bless you. And Coach, thank you. I yield.
Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the chair declares the House in recess until noon today.
The House will be in order. The prayer will be offered by Chaplain Kibben.
Would you pray with me? Teach us your way, O Lord, that on this day we may walk in your truth. You alone bear witness to what is real and right. Help us to listen to your voice amid the noise of all that is spoken around us. Focus the intentions of our hearts and the inclinations of our will on your truth, that in all that we do and say in this place, we would revere you. Enable us to align our thoughts, our words, and our actions, that they would reflect both your truth and your love. May we speak with integrity. May we act with moral courage. May we live faithfully. Holy God, redeem and sustain us that we may present ourselves to you as those whom you approve, without reason to be ashamed. And when the day is done, by your grace and guidance, may we have spoken your truth, proven faithful to your word, and served as ambassadors of your matchless love in these troubled times. In your merciful name we pray. Amen.
The chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House the approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1, Rule 1, the journal stands approved. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the gentleman from California, Mr. Correa.
Please face the flag and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The chair will entertain up to 15 requests for 1-minute speeches on each side of the aisle. For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm grateful for the leadership of Governor Henry McMaster, Commerce Secretary Harry Lightsey, Ports Authority President Micah Malice, and with Chairman of the Board, Bill Stern, for the Ports Authority to have the announcement that 2025 exports for the Palmetto State total $38.5 billion, the highest value in 7 years, as Charleston is led by Mayor William Cogswell. Motor vehicles and parts, aircraft and parts, machinery are the most exported commodities. South Carolina has exported to 198 countries and territories, creating jobs. In 2025, the highlights, we were the leading exporter of vehicles with BMW, Volvo, Mercedes, the national exporter of tires with Michelin, Bridgestone, Continental, GT, and Trelleborg. In conclusion, God bless our troops as the global war on terrorism continues. Trump is reinstituting peace through strength, revealing war criminal Putin lies, insulting Trump and mocking Trump as Putin supports Iran today after the attacks on civilians in Azerbaijan and Syria. And I am confident that President Ilham Aliyev of Azerbaijan and President Ahmad al-Shara of Syria will respond, protecting Syrians. South Carolina also recognizes the passage of our favorite son, Jesse Jackson.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Speaker, to address the body for 1 minute without objection.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor Honey Hagler and her dedication of service through nonprofit work. Ms. Hagler has spent much of her career serving our community's fastest growing demography, adults 65 and over. And since becoming the Orange County chapter president and CEO of Meals on Wheels in 2010, Ms. Hagler has led the delivery of meals to more than 15,000 older adults per year. Ms. Hagler has also served on the Leadership Council of the Orange County Strategic Plan for the Aging and as board chair of the National Association of Nutrition and Aging Services for the Aging. She's been recognized many times by the LA Times and both chambers of the California State Legislature. Congratulations, Holly, on a career filled with many accomplishments. We will miss you. Mr. Speaker,
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Maryland seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor a friend and a beloved Annapolitan, Billy Keys, who we lost last week at the age of 104. Mr. Keys was a World War II veteran, a police officer, a public school teacher, artist, a proud alpha man, husband, father, and devoted community member. Everyone fortunate enough to know Mr. Keys knew him for his wisdom, his compassion, and his unbridled wit. He served in the 761st Tank Battalion, the first all-African-American unit to enter combat during World War II, and then shared his experience with the next generation as a teacher for over 3 decades in the Anne Arundel County Public Schools. He retired only 5 years ago at the young age of 99. Mr. Keys was also an example of how to live well and how to live generously. When I visited him to mark his 100th birthday, he requested that I bring vanilla ice cream and Maryland distilled whiskey. And he made sure I let people know that while he was a lifelong registered Republican, he appreciated sharing his wisdom with service-minded Democrats. He accomplished more during his lifetime than many of us can dare to imagine, not taking a single moment for granted, and he touched so many lives through his decades of service to our community. He leaves behind a historic legacy here, and I will forever be inspired and grateful for having known him. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Connecticut seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise
The gentlewoman's recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. I rise today to honor one of the most effective staffers and one of the most trusted partners with whom I have ever had the pleasure of working. Many of you know her well, either by her presence at my side on this floor, from the town halls and the briefings she has given regarding community project funding, or her skill in helping hundreds of House Democratic offices submit their priorities to the Appropriations Committee each year. In each aspect of her role as Director of Member Services, Ryan Elizabeth Kinney has brought unmatched tenacity, patience, attention to detail, and good humor with her, all essential qualities during long debates and longer markups. Ryan is more than staff to me, she's family. I worked with her father, and I watched her grow up and begin her career as an intern in my office, who jumped at the opportunity to become my temporary scheduler. We all know that scheduling is the no-win job in the office. But Ryan handled it with aplomb, taking on a legislative portfolio, even as she became my permanent scheduler. When I took the role of Appropriations Chair, I knew there was no one I would rather have in my corner on the committee. And as always, Ryan was up for the challenge. Since then, we have known victories, we've known defeats, we've had highs and lows, and like me, Ryan never tires of the fight. I am certain that Ryan will enjoy great success in her future endeavors, wherever that may lead. And while I will miss her counsel and her company in this body, I am so proud and excited to see her pursue new opportunities and adventures. Ryan will always be part of my family, and I say thank you to you for everything. And we're all here gathered, the staff in the gallery, to say thank you. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
What do I say? Huh? Oh, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Yeah, it's okay. Mr. Speaker, one of the files is about President Trump and Mar-a-Lago. What it reads starting here is Jeffrey Epstein forwarded Ghislaine Maxwell an email from Jack Goldberger. What it says starting here is, J.E. ever expelled from Mar-a-Lago? No. He was not a member, may have been a guest, never asked to leave. Mark Epstein said Trump on J.E. plane is true. I've been on a lot of planes, may have been on his plane, no young girls on plane. What do you know about allegations against J.E.? Only what I read in the paper. Trump ever been at J.E. house? I may have been there with my wife. Any young girls there? No. May have been children of guests, but that's it. Trump specifically asked Garton to advise us of the interview. Brad had also previously talked to a manager at Mar-a-Lago. Bernd Lempt confirmed J.E. never asked to leave Mar-a-Lago. That's this document, the final one that we'll report on today. The Department of Justice is still sitting on about 3 million files. They continue to pull things back and hide them every day. The government is lying to us, and we'll continue to fight till we have full transparency.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Michigan seek recognition?
Then to address the House for 1 minute and revise my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
DTE Energy is out of control. They are requesting another outrageous rate hike just days after state regulators approved $242 million in increase, an increase of 4.6% per customer. This is our residents getting their utility costs increased. Our families can't afford higher rates with more power outages that wipe out groceries, spoil our medicines in our refrigerator, leave our neighbors without critical medical services, all because DTE in Michigan would rather spend money on campaign contributions than invest in reliability. DTE doesn't even care about reliability because they care about record profits and pay for shareholders and executives. The company, Speaker, made $1.5 billion in profits last year. This is unchecked corporate greed. DTE already charges some of the highest rates in the nation, but provides unreliable service and performs hundreds of thousands of utility shutoffs per year. And guess who subsidizes those shutoffs, Mr. Speaker? LAHI program, the taxpayers. So enough is enough. DTE Energy needs to be checked and held accountable.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from New Jersey seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the leadership of President Acebo, the 13th president of New Jersey City University in Jersey City, a proud Hudson County native and the first-generation son of Cuban immigrants. President Acebo grew up in Union City and now leads one of our state's most vital Hispanic servant institutions, now the youngest president ever to head a public university in our state. When he stepped into leadership, NJCU faced a $22 million deficit and a physical emergency. In less than 2 years, he stabilized the university's finances and restored confidence in an institution that serves working families across New Jersey's 10th. But his leadership goes beyond balance sheets. Under President Acebo, NJCU ranks #1 in New Jersey for social mobility, expanding transfer access, increased enrollment, and reaffirmed its mission to make higher education affordable and accessible. President Acebo's story reflects the very students NJCU serves, resilient and rooted in community. With that, I yield back, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Cole, seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to House Resolution 1095, I call up the bill H.R. 7744, the Department of Homeland Security Appropriations Act 2026, and ask for its immediate consideration in the House.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 7744, a bill making appropriations for the Department of Homeland Security for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2026, and for other purposes.
Pursuant to House Resolution 1095, the bill is considered read. The bill shall be debatable for 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Appropriations or their respective designees. The gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Cole, and the gentlewoman from Connecticut, Ms. DeLario, will each control 30 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on the measure under consideration.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you. Once again, we are here on the House floor amidst a partial government shutdown. The bill before us isn't new. In fact, we debated this very same bill just 2 months ago. It reflects the bipartisan, bicameral agreement that Senate Democrats at the last minute failed to honor. Shutting down the Department of Homeland Security over a partisan fight hasn't changed the stakes. But maybe, knowing how critical it is to keep the homeland safe at this heightened moment, Democrats will side with reason and protecting the nation. No matter the question, shutdowns are never the answer. I know my colleagues think by shutting down the government, they are somehow punishing Donald Trump for winning the election. But President Trump is not the one feeling the pain of a shutdown. They are punishing the TSA agents who are working hard to keep their community safe. They're punishing FEMA employees who are trying to help Americans fighting through these winter storms. They're punishing the cybersecurity analysts at CISA who are combating constant threats to our infrastructure and electric grid. Hundreds of thousands of federal employees in critical national security positions are being forced to work without pay. Their jobs leave no room for error, but they're being asked to continue that critical work with the added stress of not knowing when they'll receive their next paycheck, not knowing if they'll be able to put gas in their cars or food on their table. A few weeks ago, we heard from TSA Acting Director McNeil at an appropriations hearing. She talked about the impact of the longest shutdown in history, which was also initiated by Democrats. She told us about agents sleeping in their cars in the airport parking lot rather than spending money on gas to drive home because they couldn't afford it. Officers who sold their blood and plasma or took second jobs with what little spare time they had just to have money to feed their families. These hardworking families are just now barely recovered from the previous shutdown antics, and they are once again in the same confusing and undeserved position. Closing down or shortchanging federal agencies is irrational and irresponsible. This isn't something anyone should be proud of. It breaks my heart to hear of these stories. We know that shutdowns cause pain and uncertainty for the nation. Personally, I would find it unconscionable if my vote was the reason someone was sleeping in their car, or if my vote was the reason someone couldn't pay their mortgage this month. This isn't a game. These are real people and real lives. In addition to the astoundingly negative human impact this shutdown is having on men and women who work for DHS, it's directly impacting our ability to keep Americans safe during heightened national security threats. In-person trainings at the National Fire Academy, the National Emergency Training Center, and the Center for Domestic Preparedness and the National Disaster and Emergency Management University have been canceled. The FEMA Disaster Relief Fund has a low balance, and the account will continue to be drained without new appropriations. Wait times at our nation's airport are already increasing as staffing strains hit the TSA workforce. There will be no new national flood insurance policies processed impacting Americans buying homes. CISA operates at limited capacity with the majority of the workforce furloughed. Meanwhile, Iranian, Russian, and Chinese cyber actors continue targeting U.S. networks and critical infrastructure. While Coast Guard service members received their most recent check, civilian personnel are working without pay. Homeland Security investigators who investigate wide-ranging illicit activity like drugs and weapons smuggling, as well as human trafficking, are not moving forward. These limitations on our national security capabilities should concern us all. There's no reason to vote against this critical funding for our Department of Homeland Security at such an important time for our country. I urge all my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to vote yes to end this shutdown and to keep our nation safe. With that, Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlewoman from Connecticut is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume here.
Gentlewoman's recognized.
I rise in opposition to the bill. Let us face facts. The bill we are considering today has no chance of becoming law. It has already failed once. It will fail again. Republican leadership is aware of this, but they still have chosen to waste our time on political theater, while President Trump's aimless, endless, and costly war with Iran puts American lives in danger. Whether it is from crises abroad or masked agents at home, President Trump and Republicans are putting Americans at risk. Democrats are fighting to keep our communities safe, both from foreign adversaries and out-of-control federal agents. if the Republicans are actually serious about the threat that President Trump's war with Iran has caused, then they should move quickly to bring up my bill, which they rejected, which would fund FEMA, TSA, the Coast Guard, the Secret Service, federal law enforcement training centers, Science and Technology Directorate, the Office of Inspector General, Federal Protective Services, and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, while setting funding for ICE and Customs and Border Protection aside as negotiations on those issues continues. There is broad agreement on funding for these agencies. There's no controversy over funding disaster relief or aviation security, or making sure the men and women of the Coast Guard and the Secret Service are paid. What there is a significant controversy over, however, is how ICE and Customs and Border Protection have beaten, detained, harassed, and even killed law-abiding U.S. citizens with zero accountability. So I ask my colleagues across the aisle, why not allow funding for the parts of Homeland Security over which we have no disagreements to pass? Allow disaster relief fund to be replenished. Allow TSA and Secret Service agents to be paid. Allow the Coast Guard to support its service members. Ensure our cybersecurity measures are in place while we continue to negotiate the reforms to ICE and Customs and Border Protection that the vast majority of Americans want to see enacted. Republicans have called these reforms radical, unreasonable. I would like to know which reforms specifically they feel are out of line. Let me tell you where there is a broad support for these, and do they oppose? Do they oppose prohibiting the detention or the deportation of U.S. citizens? Are they opposed to that? Are they opposed to requiring agents to get a warrant from a judge before kicking in someone's door? Are they opposed to removing masks, requiring badges and identification on uniforms? Are they opposed to prohibiting operations at sensitive locations like schools, medical facilities, houses of worship? Are they opposed to allowing independent investigations into wrongdoing? And are they opposed to ending racial profiling and ending roving patrols? Those are the discussions that are underway. Let us continue to do that. And are they really willing to block funding for the rest of the Department of Homeland Security because they believe so strongly that these armed federal agencies marauding our streets, armed and terrorizing our communities, they believe that they should be allowed to hide their faces as they patrol our streets? They believe that that's the case. Mr. Speaker, these reforms are fundamental. They are the same standards that law enforcement all across this country abide by. They protect our communities, they protect law enforcement, and they protect our basic constitutional rights. I encourage my Republican colleagues not to let their opposition to these necessary and overwhelmingly popular reforms stand in the way of funding the rest of the Department of Homeland Security, especially now as President Trump's war with Iran has put Americans at risk. Thank you, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 4 minutes to my very good friend, the distinguished gentleman from Nevada and chairman of the Homeland Security Subcommittee of the Appropriations Committee, Mr. Amadei.
The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you to my colleague, the ranking member on the other side. As the chairman of the Homeland Security Subcommittee, obviously I rise today in strong support of the fiscal year 2026 Homeland Security Appropriations Bill. Later today, we will vote on this bill for a second time in 2 months. It shouldn't be necessary. The committee negotiated a full-year bill on a bicameral, bipartisan basis. Our bill includes reforms like funding for body-worn cameras, negotiated amongst both sides, both houses. De-escalation training, something else that we've heard about. Democrats continue to insist on proposals which would prevent the enforcement of immigration law. So it's disappointing that we must cajole our colleagues to support this bipartisan bill once again. But here we are. The Department of Homeland Security has now been shut down for more than 3 weeks with no apparent end in sight. Let's really talk about, just for a second, why we're here. One of the biggest successes of the present administration is what they've done on the border and what they've done in terms of ending unlimited immigration from the previous administration and how they're trying to clean that up. That is a phenomenal sore spot among some of my colleagues. And you know what? Why are we here with this? Why are we ignoring TSA and all the stuff you're going to hear throughout this? We've got Secret Service, we've got FEMA, we've got all of these things going on, Coast Guard. Why are we ignoring all those? Because the thing that really upsets them is the success on the number one issue that this administration ran on, which was cleaning up the border. So now, when you've got some operations in the Twin Cities that are under investigation, it's like, here we go. We can fix on this, trying to take the plum so far of this administration's accomplishments. And there are many. So here we are until we get to a point where we can move on to something else and, forget the wall's still being built. There's plenty of money for operations with ICE, all of those things, but we're doing political stuff. And I get it. I understand it. I just don't understand how that gets to the top of the rail when there's been reforms, been quiet up in the Twin Cities for a while now. There have been pivots made. So while utility bills, mortgages, car payments, and grocery bills don't stop coming because the Senate has decided to hold this bill hostage, we sit here and struggle through and hope that people can struggle through in all the other homeland areas that are on hold. So what I would tell you is this: vote yes, end the shutdown. I yield the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. The gentlewoman from Connecticut is recognized.
I yield, Mr. Speaker, 2 minutes to the gentlewoman from Minnesota, the distinguished ranking member of the Defense Subcommittee, Ms. McCollum.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, the Department of Homeland Security Appropriations Bill, while it fails to address the dangerous and illegal activities from DHS agents in Minnesota that we have witnessed since the Operation and Metro Surge, and they're still going on. Our neighbors were racially profiled, detained without cause. Peaceful demonstrators were threatened and harassed, continue to be. American citizens were assaulted and kidnapped from their homes and even killed in our streets. Democrats are calling for common sense reforms that protect our communities and our rights. We want ICE and agent borders to follow the same rules as our local law enforcement. Identify yourself, use your body camera, get a real judicial warrant when you enter a home, and establish a policy clearly for use of force. When DHS agents engage in illegal or dangerous behavior, we want independent investigations to hold them accountable. I will not vote for more funding for ICE or CBC until this Congress includes those reforms, period. Republicans should allow a vote on Ranking Member Delores' bill that would separate ICE and Border Patrol and Secretary Noem's office while we negotiate real reforms. It would fund the law-abiding components of DHS, like the Coast Guard and FEMA and Cybersecurity Infrastructure Agent, known as CISA. CISA works to protect our critical infrastructure, our emergency communications, and our election systems. In Minnesota, when we learned that the hard way, when St. Paul suffered a major cyber attack last system, it took us weeks to recover. I'm puzzled by Republicans in this bill would cut $268 million from CISA. We should be increasing money for cybersecurity, not reducing it, and I urge my colleagues to vote no.
The gentlewoman reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 90 seconds to my very good friend, the distinguished gentlelady from California, Ms. Kim.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Chairman, for yielding. Today, we are in a battle for the safety and security of every U.S. citizen. Threats against our nation are at an all-time high, and our adversaries are actively looking for weakness. And we are putting ourselves in harm's way by not carrying out the most basic function of government, protecting the homeland. This is not a political game. TSA officers are working without pay while protecting our airports. Coast Guardsmen are risking their lives at home and are active in the Persian Gulf. FEMA coordinators are operating with limited resources as we get closer to wildfire season. Federal law enforcement is securing our borders against narco-terrorists. But thanks to Democrat dysfunction, none of these patriots will see their paychecks this month. We already learned this in October. Our Homeland Security should never be used as a bargaining chip. I urge my colleagues to choose patriotism over partisanship and fund the Department of Homeland Security immediately. I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields. The gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. The gentlewoman from Connecticut is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Subramania.
The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm a little confused why we're still having this shutdown and still having this debate, because House Democrats have been very clear about what we want. We just want no more masked agents and warrantless break-ins. And we also have a bill that would fund the important parts of DHS, like FEMA and like other parts of it, but what we don't want is to be funding private planes for the secretary, and what we want is some accountability for ICE and transparency. This is what the American people want. But I want to remind us about who is actually prioritizing safety, because it's this administration that actually fired a lot of people that were cybersecurity experts. We're now in a war where cybersecurity is at the forefront. They fired a lot of people who were in counterterrorism, and now there's a 22-year-old running counterterrorism for our country, and now we're in a war with a country that specializes in terrorism. And meanwhile, Secretary Nome has spent millions on personal planes. The American taxpayers want accountability for their tax dollars, and they deserve better. I yield back.
The gentlewoman from Connecticut reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 90 seconds to my very good friend, the distinguished gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. McKenzie.
The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Cole, for yielding that time. For nearly 3 weeks, the key pieces of the Department of Homeland Security have been shut down, and families face uncertainty about their paychecks. This is happening because some in this chamber are choosing to play politics at a time when the work of DHS staff is urgently needed, and despite having negotiated this bipartisan agreement themselves. Today, some DHS components are operating at limited capacity. Trainings are halted, long-term planning is paused, and only bare minimum essential services are being continued. This is not sustainable for our national security. While some have chosen to politicize this debate by exclusively focusing on ICE, this ignores the fact that DHS is responsible for a wide range of responsibilities that are essential for our national security. TSA officers stand on the front lines every single day to secure our skies, yet they're working without paychecks. The Coast Guard can fully execute marine security if they had funding, but search and rescue operations, drug interdiction missions, all of those are in jeopardy because, again, of the opposition from the other side. FEMA's disaster response and recovery efforts are scaled back as severe weather and emergencies approach. CISA, our nation's cyber defense agency, is operating at limited capacity during heightened global tensions. The Secret Service faces constraints in protecting our leaders.
An additional minute.
Gentleman's recognized.
And all of this, again, is after the other side voted in a bipartisan way, supported this effort initially, and then pulled back their support because of politics. It is despicable what we see happening going on in our budgeting process here in Congress. We should stand up right now at a time more than ever to protect the American people and protect our homeland by providing this funding. It's time to put the politics aside, support the men and women who protect our nation, prioritize that safety of the American people, and that means ending this shutdown, passing the bill, and fully restoring the operational readiness of the Department of Homeland Security. Thank you, and I yield back.
The gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. The gentlewoman from Connecticut is recognized.
I would just say to the gentleman about who's playing politics, his words are really disingenuous. Fund my bill. Let's pay these federal employees. Let's pay them all. That's what they deserve. They are working hard. And you want to protect the American citizens? Protect them from ICE and fund the alternative and pay people who are working hard. I'd like to yield now 2 minutes to the gentleman from Maryland, the distinguished ranking member of the Financial Services and General Government Subcommittee, Mr. Hoyer.
I thank the gentleman recognized.
I thank the gentlelady for yielding. Mr. Chairman, ICE agents are being paid. Border Patrol agents are being paid. The representation to the American people that somehow we've shut down the agents of ICE is not true. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I'm told. And the weeping and gnashing of teeth that I hear from some of your colleagues, they can fund right now, through a unanimous consent, all of the people that you are lamenting are not being paid. You have it in your power, or the Speaker has it in his power, to agree to a unanimous consent to pass the gentlelady's bill. And everybody that you're wringing your hands about, not you, sir, Mr. Speaker, through you, the hands are being wrung, are totally without merit. We will vote for, and by the way, we did not vote for the Department of Homeland Security on our side. There were 7 of us. The rest of us voted no because we didn't agree with what the Department of Homeland Security in ICE, and not TSA, not Coast Guard, not the other agencies, but ICE and CPB. We don't agree with what they're doing. But what you're doing, Mr. Speaker, on that side of the aisle, is to hold everybody else hostage for a bill that we did not vote for. So stop saying we made some deal. Our deal was to separate it out, and we were against it. That was the deal. And that's what I did. I voted for all the rest of the bills, as my side did, and I voted against Department of Homeland Security because we want what they're doing stopped to protect the American people.
Gentleman, an additional 30 seconds.
The gentleman's recognized.
So I say to my friends who keep wringing their hands like Pontius Pilate that somebody is not paying them, the people who are not paying everybody other than CPB, and who are being paid out of a huge fund that they have available to them, are the people that you will not let go. We're for funding everybody but the 2 agencies we have mentioned, and we have a difference of opinion on. Pontius Pilate
Gentleman's time has expired.
could not rid himself.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentlewoman from Connecticut reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I reserve at this time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlewoman from Connecticut is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, the Republican bill today has no chance. I've said it before, I'll say it again. It has no chance of becoming law. It failed before, and it will fail again. On the other hand, my bill to refund FEMA, TSA, cybersecurity, the Coast Guard, the Secret Service, and other law-abiding components of the Department of Homeland Security while negotiations continue on ICE and CBP, is the most viable path forward. It is the best way to respond to those hard-working federal employees in those agencies. If Republicans are serious about funding the vast majority of the Department of Homeland Security, as President Trump's open-ended war with Iran puts Americans at risk, they must bring it up for a vote immediately. For this reason, at the appropriate time, I will offer a motion to recommit this bill back to committee. If the House rules permitted, I would have offered the motion with an important amendment to this bill. My amendment would have replaced the text of the doomed Republican proposal with the text of my bill to fund the parts of the Department of Homeland Security over which there is no disagreement. I ask unanimous consent to insert into the record the text of this amendment, and I hope my colleagues will join me in voting for the motion to recommit.
Without objection.
I reserve.
The gentlewoman reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I would advise my friend I'm prepared to close whenever she is.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
And I am prepared to close as well. Mr. Speaker, we've heard a lot today about the federal workers who are impacted by this lapse in funding. And I have to say, I am surprised to hear so many of my Republican colleagues suddenly express such ardent concern for the fate of federal workers. Where was this concern when President Trump and Elon Musk decimated the federal workforce last year? Where was the concern when they drove close to 1,000 cybersecurity and infrastructure security agency employees? That was 1/3 of the staff out of our nation's leading cybersecurity, the agency. Where was the outrage when President Trump proposed slashing funding for the same agency by $500 million? That was part of the president's budget. Not a peep from my Republican colleagues. Where were they when the Trump administration appointed a 22-year-old, an intern, to head the key Department of Homeland Security's counterterrorism, that office? I have no patience for the crocodile tears being shed by anyone who sat by as President Trump and Kristi Noem tried to eliminate FEMA entirely. People who said not a word when the White House hollowed out whole agencies without the consent of the Congress. They were silent when all of these things happened. Now, all of a sudden, they are ardent defenders of cybersecurity and others. It is nothing more, as I said, than political theater. This kind of selective sympathy often betrays a partisan agenda. If Republicans were serious this week, we could have funded every agency under the Department of Homeland Security, except for ICE and for CBP. And I will not vote for another dime for these agencies until we get the reforms that the American people want in stopping these agencies from terrorizing our communities. And by the way, we could have funded every agency under D except for ICE and CBP, who, by the way, and I talk to my colleagues, you're sitting on $140 billion from the one big, beautiful bill. Let's dip into those dollars and pay for these federal employees. I encourage my colleagues, vote no on what is a cynical attempt to extract more funding for lawless agencies because of a crisis that the president has created without an imminent threat. And I call on the Republican leadership to stop blocking my bill to fund the parts of the Department of Homeland Security upon which we all agree. And let's continue the negotiation, continue on the parts that we do not agree on. Thank you, and I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I yield myself the balance of my time.
The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you. I want to begin by thanking my very good friend, the ranking member, for participating in the debate and for working with us to get most of the government open. Quite frankly, and I want to not correct my good friend from Maryland who spoke earlier, but just provide some context. When we were in negotiations over this bill, we're in the majority in each chamber, and we asked the minority what did they need. And my friend, the ranking member, told me what she needed, and we compromised on almost every bill, all but one. And she said, and this is the form in which I would like to receive it. I think that would maximize the chances of funding most of the government. And she followed her word to the letter. And we got most of those bills through. We actually got all of those bills through because we did it. By the same token, I asked our friends, the Senate Democrats, what do you need in terms of this to be able to pass the legislation? Doesn't mean you have to agree with everything in it. It's a compromise bill. So they told us what they needed, and they wanted a package, not a separate vote, and they got exactly what they asked for and exactly what they had agreed to. Nobody got everything they wanted, but yep, this is a compromise bill. You get it to us in this form, and we can pass it. They didn't. Now, the reality is a majority of each chamber is in favor of this legislation. They were in favor of the other 5 bills, which thankfully were enacted, or we'd be in the middle of a complete government shutdown. Now, the majority of both chambers have voted for this bill. This is a case of the minority deciding to hold the majority hostage. No legislative majority is ever going to agree to that. My friends would not agree to that. I was here when we were debating the repeal of Obamacare. We adopted a similar strategy to what Senate Democrats are pursuing today. And note I said Senate Democrats. Didn't work. I didn't think it was very smart. We brought whole sections of the government out to reauthorize. We could say exactly what our friends are saying today. Well, gosh, you're not for shutting down the Department of Defense. You're not for this. You should vote for that. They didn't vote for any of it because they said they weren't going to be blackmailed, and they also said that that was nonsensical to pick and choose which of the different agencies and particular departments we would keep open. They were right about that. But they're now pursuing exactly what Republicans did and exactly what they condemned so vociferously, and I would say correctly, at the time. This is legislative blackmail, and the people that are being hurt are the people that have nothing to do with this dispute. That are doing their jobs, the people at FEMA, the people at TSA, elements of the Coast Guard, the civilian elements of the Coast Guard, whole ranges of things I went through in my opening statement. There's simply no justification for it. There are negotiations going on these various matters dealing with Homeland Security. Some of them are in the bill. Body cameras, excellent Democratic suggestion. 9 times out of 10, I think body cameras show the law enforcement official is almost always in the right. But on that 10th time, you certainly want to know when they're not, so you can correct that problem. Good idea. And that was a Democratic suggestion that we incorporated in the bill. Or let's have, de-escalation training, lower tensions. Good idea. That's in the bill. There were other things we tried to get in the bill that frankly probably ought to be done just by operations that we weren't able to succeed. But we have to have a bill that can pass both chambers and be signed by the president. Now, government and appropriations, more than any other part, is a give and take item. A process. And we negotiated almost everything very, very openly and honestly. We negotiated this bill openly and honestly. It was Senate Democrats who, after agreeing to one thing, which, by the way, is exactly what happened in the first government shutdown, and we should look at that. How did that end up? 43 days, longest government shutdown in history. Did Democrats achieve any of their objectives? No. Now, they think they scored political points. They think it made them more popular. But did they substantially achieve anything? No. Right now, there are negotiations going on, largely involving the administration and Senate Democrats, that's fine. And I understand there's some changes being made there. We ought to allow that process to continue. We should not shut down the government. Now, this bill is substantially the same as my friend, the chairman of the subcommittee, Mr. Amodei, said, is what we saw on this floor 2 months ago. But the situation is fundamentally different. We're in even more dangerous times. We can debate about that ad infinitum, but I don't think we should be debating as to whether our Homeland Security apparatus should be up, paid, operational, vigilant, and alert. This is the time of all times that should happen. And I think some of my friends on the other side, not all of them, but some of them will have changed their mind because circumstances are different. Frankly, we want to give them the opportunity to go ahead and vote that way if they have changed their mind. If they haven't, that's fine. They can go ahead and keep the department shut down. But it is at odds with everything they have stood for and preached, for many, many, many years. And in the end, I don't think it's helpful in moving the country forward or solving problems. I've never favored shutdowns. I've never argued for them. I've always argued against them, whether my party did it, and we've certainly done it, or the other side. Same thing's true now. So, Mr. Speaker, I think if we reflect, we should, in a bipartisan way, do what we did 2 months ago, pass this bill. Hopefully the Senate will have the opportunity to do the same thing. I urge my colleagues to support this bill, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields. All time for debate has expired pursuant to House Resolution 1095. The previous question is ordered on the bill. The question is on engrossment and third reading of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
Bill making appropriations for the Department of Homeland Security for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2026, and for other purposes.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Connecticut seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have a motion to recommit at the desk.
The clerk will report the motion.
Ms. DeLauro of Connecticut moves to recommit the bill, H.R. 7744, to the Committee on Appropriations.
Pursuant to Clause 2B of Rule 19, the previous question is ordered on the motion to recommit. The question is on the motion. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The noes have it. The motion is not agreed to.
Mr. Speaker, I request the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the chair declares the House in recess, subject to the call of the chair.